And a very good morning to you. My name is David Batsoffen, and I host a travel blog called Travel and Things. And at the moment, I'm having a cup of coffee, and I'm in conversation with Mike Karantonis, who is a co-owner of Africa Direct. Mike, good morning. Welcome to you.
Morning, David. Thank you for having me.
Where does lockdown find you?
At home and not in the bush or traveling. So I'm lucky to be in a beautiful place, which has saved me. Lots of trees, birds, dams, and some space. But yeah, I would have been in Zambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Tanzania by now in the last 2.5 months. But I've done some quality time at home.
You talk about bird life. Have you found that the birds have returned because the people have sort of vanished?
Not a massive amount, but definitely a noticeable change. For example, like if the plants, you don't sort of keep your garden as neat as it normally is, and a couple of flowers grow here and there, and you get a couple of extra birds around. And one thing that I've noticed is that they're becoming more relaxed with us in the garden because we're always around versus here around in the morning and then gone for the day and then back in the afternoon. There's a certain absence of you being around, but now that you're always here, they don't kind of fly off when you arrive around them. So it's really nice. There is a small but noticeable difference.
Yeah, I must say, aside from the usual birds that we get in my garden, I had a pair of woodpeckers in here the other day, and I got so excited. But by the time I thought, oh, camera, they were gone, and they haven't come back, unfortunately.
Yeah. Now I leave my camera and binoculars outside, so I don't have to run in and get it, and they're gone by the time I get back. So
I
I'm
wasn't
prepared
expecting them.
Yeah. No, it's good.
What I did see, and I haven't seen anything on any of the platforms here in our suburb, was a raptor carrying what I thought was a cat. And given that we've got Delta Park not too far away, I don't think it's not feasible that might have happened, but I was waiting for somebody to say my cat has disappeared, and I think a bird's taken it, and then I could have said yes, I saw it. But again, it was too fleeting for me to take pictures, unfortunately or unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it could have been a wild kitten or a slightly smaller cat or something like it. It's not impossible, but if it is the case, then it's one back for the birds because you're always so stressed about the cats affecting the local bird life.
Yeah.
In your garden, at least the birds have got one back for them.
I must say, living close to Delta Park, we've had owls through the garden. There have been lesser spotted genets seen in our neighborhood. I haven't had them in my garden, but they've been in the area. And in fact, a couple of years ago, we even had a 6-month-old spotted hyena wandering down First Avenue in our suburb that had come all the way from Krugersdorp, they discovered.
That's crazy. A spotted hyena.
Yeah, it ended up in the Joburg Zoo. They rehabbed it for about 6 or 7 months and then took it back to the nature reserve in Krugersdorp and re-released it there.
That's amazing. Yeah, it is a little crazy at times or at the moment because there was also that sort of sub-adult closing in on adult male lion that was lurking and roaming around through the Klipkopje Dam region, just not too far north and east of us, that had come from the Kruger. And it was, with all of the reports, it was getting relatively close to our town, and it really changed the dynamics of sitting outside at night or listening to monkeys calling. And you almost secretly or surreptitiously were wishing that it would keep on going, so that we could either see tracks or hear stir. So yeah, all of the wildlife that's starting to find its way around in different areas it's exciting, and it's a nice change for us.
Mike, tell me a bit about Africa Direct. What is it that you do, and are you able to do whatever it is that you do currently, or have you got to now put everything on hold?
Well, Africa Direct is a tour operating company, which is a little different to most, where what we do is we plan and arrange tours, safaris, holidays for what we call an FRT, is a fully international traveler. And our main markets are from America and from Europe, or the States and Europe. And we privately tailor make journeys through Africa and beaches and islands, safari for people. However, we do have also another division where we have privately hosted or privately guided safaris, which is where myself and a couple of other guides come in, where we're professional guides and we'll kind of look after them on their safari portion of it, of having over 20 years of experience and having a professional aspect to the safari done for them. But it's actually, to sum it up, it's an all-round, very bespoke safari coordinating and planning company. So we'll have people from anywhere in the world come to us and say, these are the dates we need to travel. This is how much we've got. These are our interests. Help us out, because there's so much out there on the internet. It's either a cover up, or the photos make it look a hell of a lot better, or the area that you traverse on, they say there's big five, but it's actually a fenced area. So we take the rolling the dice out of making a big commitment to a safari holiday in Africa, and put it together for people without any worries and best value for money, and just so that that it's a stress-free process, whether it's through the product knowledge that we have, or through efficiency, or through suggestions, or tailor making, whatever. So it's a start to end preparation, organization, and implementing of a bespoke trip to Africa.
Mike, with lockdown as it is at the moment, and nobody seems to know what, when, or how, because at the moment, and I find this really weird, at level 3, which is where we are currently, as long as I stay in Gauteng, I can go to a game reserve for the day. I can drive around in my car. I cannot get out of my car to go and have a picnic. I can go to the toilet, but I can't go to the restaurant, and I can't overnight. But I can't go out of province. So I can't even go and do a self-drive in Madikwe, because that's in Northwest and I'm in Gauteng. And I find that really, really weird. And I'm sure you guys are finding this too. People are saying to you, why? Why can't we? It's in the bush. There's nobody else around us. We're a family group. We're in lockdown together. Why can't we get out?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second, but just while you're chatting, I go back to another question that you asked in terms of how lockdown affected us, and I'll move into how that affects the Kruger, etc. Was we have in this time been able to continue working, not out in the field, but as a tour operator, where a lot of people have had to stop their trips and cancel. And what we've done is where all of the establishments have been very supportive and helpful through it, where we've just postponed their trip to next year. So same dates next year. So that's been really positive for the industry's ball not completely stopping in momentum. But and also it gives people this light at the end of the tunnel, that there's still something beautiful after all of this to look forward to, is their trip to Africa. So that's been pretty positive. Work in a large factor has carried on, but it's also slowed down a lot. But there's a lot of positivity to it. But then to answer your second question with regards to going to a national park or doing a self-drive, there is no reason why someone shouldn't be able to go into a wilderness area, for example, because it's open space, it's a family group, and it's within the province, etc. So it does on paper sound really good, but for an example, I would imagine here in the Kruger, let's say, for example, all of us who live in the Lowveld, Nelspruit, White River, Hoedspruit, whatever it might happen to be, Palabora, we all live here, a large majority, because we love the Lowveld. It's beautiful, and we chose to be here. And part of the decision, I would say, is because we love the bush so much. We really, really enjoy the wildlife and stuff. So a large majority of us would have something, for example, like wild cards, and it makes it for the national parks, really affordable for us and quick and easy to get in and out. So if the large majority of the people that are close to the Kruger, and I'll use us as the Kruger for an example, have wild cards, and we all want to go to, we're not really paying anything to go in. So when you want to open the Kruger, it means that you've got staff to man the gates, and people to, look after, whether it be policing or managing the whole process out there. So you're going to have to put people out in the field to start managing the movement of people that are coming in. But there's not necessarily a lot of revenue being generated because of the fact that there's none being made for us all visiting. So in terms of practicality or rationality, yes, it's fine for us to go in and drive around, stay away from everybody, all the restaurants, stay in your car, go to the toilet, look at some animals, all makes sense. But in terms of protecting ourselves from the virus, but when it comes to logistically implementing staff and revenue and paying them, it would probably mean that they would run at a loss.
Yeah,
so
I hear what you're saying.
So that's just one aspect, but I don't know why we can't, because the minute it was even breathed or mentioned, we start packing things and getting ready and planning with wind and whatever, and then they'd pull the handbrake up on it again with as you can. With what reasons go on, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I have to say that I'm one of those, because I was actually meant to be in the bush this week writing an article for a magazine, and I held off contacting the 3 lodges involved because I didn't want to have that, I'm sorry, we're in lockdown, you can't come. It's been my beacon for the last 60 odd days. And then last week I got the first, and once I got the first saying, I'm sorry, David, but we're still locked down, I knew that the other 2 would follow in very quick succession. And unfortunately, they did. So I'm not in the bush. I'm sitting in my office at the moment. But just to rub salt into the wound, because the dates were in my calendar, my phone beeped yesterday morning going, you're in the game reserve. And I wanted to hurl the phone across the yard going, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
it's really, I couldn't push delete fast enough.
Yeah. It is a really testing and very trying time in every facet of what you can think of, whether it be work, whether it be pleasure. We just got to grind through it, because I sympathize with you as well when my phone beeps on the calendar and I'm going to catch a flight from Nelspruit to Joburg, from Joburg to Nairobi, and there's a 2-week trip following migration, and I can't. So my heart really does go out to you, and I sort of also, my heart and mind goes out to everybody. I mean, us as people who are local are terribly passionate in that, as you described your disappointment, are passionate about the wildlife. You can imagine people in America who have had the taste of African wildlife and that excitement of the early morning and looking for lion. It's their beacon of light, like you say, but from the other end of the world, they've booked it a year in advance, and it's their year's highlight. And as South African people who are in hospitality, but also just fun and happy and enthusiastic, they just want to surround themselves with happy, good people and mind-blowing wildlife, and the excitement of travel, and that got taken away from them as well.
Yeah.
So we all in the same boat. You love travel, I love travel, they love travel, and unfortunately, with this, we're at the end on the end of the list. We're last in line to start getting given things back. So
Yeah.
we've got to be the most patient out of everyone.
You mentioned something there, Mike, and when I started going back into the bush a couple of years ago, I was always very judgmental of the international tourists that just wanted to see the big five. They'd get on the vehicle, show us the big five, and that's all they were interested in. And then I realized how I changed, because firstly, you can't be judgmental of people whose background you don't know. They could have saved up their entire lives for that 1 week trip to come and see the big five, and then go home knowing that they'd never come back to Africa. And we are very blessed. We really and truly are, those of us that are able to get into the bush on a regular basis. Because, and you may be the same as me, if I go like I was this week and I didn't see leopard, I know that in 3 weeks' time, I'm going to be back at a different camp and I may see it there. So I'm never stressed, because I know that in just a few weeks, pre-March the 27th, I would have been back in the bush somewhere else looking for the animal that I didn't see the week before.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There is this ebb and flow between training providers or lodge ethoses or guides style or tactics or whatever it is in the bush. And yes, the smaller sort of more intricate things are very integral in any type of safari, because it's actually the big picture that at the end of the day comes down to when you get it or when you don't. But it's a really big factor for us as a company, where with the lodges and the guides that we use or choose at lodges, for example, are people who get it, as you say, that it's not about what I want or it's not about what I see. And I think the way you put it is great, in terms of put yourself in someone else's shoes, in terms of the fact that how long have they saved? How important is this trip to them? You ask them when they get onto the vehicle, what if you have to see anything before you leave here? Please tell me, what is it? Because I'd really like to work hard at finding it for you. So you have this fulfilled, happy sort of conquest journey type of feeling when you leave. And it's not up to me to say, I think it's important that you see this or you see that. Yeah. I will. But if they want to see lions and they want to see leopard or a giraffe or a zebra or whatever it is, they come first. Their interests, their happiness, their obviously making it a major priority is their safety and just the full enjoyment. And then once you have, because a lot of people say, don't chase after the big five or don't do this Ferrari safari type of thing. But it's important to scratch that itch of theirs, to show them that leopard, and because that's what they've dreamed of, or that elephant or whatever. And normally you've got 3 or 4 days, so give them what they want in the beginning, because that's what they came for. And then as they start to relax, they feel like things have been achieved or accomplished with the trip that they've come, then start putting in what makes you happy, or you want to share your interests with them. And then they start seeing, okay, well, wow, this is a lot bigger than I actually thought. And you start filling up those little holes. You fill the big ones for them, but then you fill up the smaller ones at a gradual pace. And eventually they start seeing it. And it's a great relationship between their needs and your desire to serve and to teach, and because it's an adventurous educational holiday. It is. And it's a very unique thing to have 2 such dramatic titles in one destination, is an educational but adventurous destination. So you're 100% right. Make them happy, show them what they wanted to come for, and then take it from there.
You've added one more. I have 3 standards: inform, educate, and entertain. And you've now added adventure, which I think is really cool. But you mentioned 2 animals that I've found over the last few years seem to have almost crept into the big 5, and that's zebra and giraffe. for some reason, they have grabbed the attention and maybe even the hearts of international visitors. And I've been on vehicles where it's almost been like, oh, there's a lion sighting. No, there's a giraffe. I want to sit and watch the giraffe. I don't need to see lions. We saw lions yesterday.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the most wonderful things that you do catch on to or start realizing is that there was a tourist research done at the airport more than 15 years ago, and where they would grab someone coming through international departures and say, sorry, if you've got 2 minutes, I'd love you to answer the question. But if they were going on safari and they were willing to, they would say, sure, what's your question? If they say, if there's 5 animals that you want to see before you go home, what would it be? Based on this whole big 5 thing, to try and prove a point that it's not necessarily all about that.
Mm.
And the 5 animals that was by far the most submitted was lion, leopard, elephant, giraffe, and zebra. And they are 2 super meaningful animals to people. And after that, research or reading about that particular article, and then being lucky as I am to go in as a field guide every day in the bush and having the blessings of having people to look after, it's easy for me to go and test the waters based on what I read. And it's 99% true when I would get the same response as giraffe and zebra. And I think it kind of, from chatting and watching and seeing, one of the greatest things that I have in my job is to be able to turn around and look at everybody in the vehicle and look at the expression on people's faces of the joy, the excitement, the dream come true look and type of thing. And, I think it's very, very deep in a lot of people, where a thing like a giraffe and a zebra in a storybook from a young kid who's always been in Africa, and an elephant and a lion. So I think subconsciously, from a very long time ago, even as a kid, when you read these storybooks at night or in your lounge or on the couch or whatever, a zebra and a giraffe have always been in the storybooks. But besides that, just the iconic shape, color, patterns, it's just so different to anything else. And it has crept deep into the hearts of a lot of people around the world. And it's stayed in the back of everyone's mind from a child. And now they're 30, 40, 50, and the chance to have a childhood storybook come to life.
Yeah.
It definitely are 2 animals that are now become a very popular celebrity and a must-see animal.
The other one that I really like, and Disney has a lot to blame for people disliking them, are hyena. I think hyena are cool, and I can sit and watch them. I mean, if you go into Kruger, they're all over the place, and you can sit and watch them for hours. You really and truly can. But they've got a really bad reputation thanks to the Lion King.
Yeah, no, they do. Which is also taking a lot of fixing to do in that way. It has given them another character in the storybook of what people want to come and see.
Yeah.
And but I agree with you. I absolutely love hyena. I find them fascinating. They are a massive keystone species to have within an environment in terms of how it all fits together, and it's very different. And I mean, you'd have to literally sit and get into, there's nothing better for me than to have the luck of a hyena den on whatever property I'm in or game reserve I'm in, where you can go and visit the hyena den. And there's adults and sub-adults and the youngsters, and they're all there all the time. So you don't need to drive after or follow, watch where you're going or whatever it is. They're all there, and you can park the car, and it gives you as long as you need to sit and talk about them and enjoy them and engage, like just observe. But the greatest opportunity that I have with a hyena den is to turn 180 degrees the preconceived idea of what you're saying a hyena is and the role that it has. And it's wonderful to change the perspective of people of hyena to being a scavenging criminal to a super predator who is super adaptable, is a keystone species, just mind-blowing with its capabilities, its influence, and yeah, and then it changes, but you are right, and it's another opportunity that we have, and which we love as guides, being out there, sharing Africa with them in its realities. Yep, they're amazing. I love them. I can spend hours.
You know, when Peter Benchley wrote Jaws, all those years ago, and terrified people out of oceans all around the world, years later, he actually apologized, and he said, because what he'd done was he'd taken, it wasn't just the shark in Jaws wasn't just a great white, it was beyond size. And he said what he'd done was he'd taken the worst characteristics from like the top 5 sharks, put them all into that animatronic, and that's what people saw. And he came out and apologized, and he said he was sorry that he'd done it, because in retrospect, sharks aren't, much like hyena, are not the evil creatures that glide around the oceans looking for people to eat. The people that they kill are collateral damage more often than not. That's all they are.
Very much so. And I know that there's, as with everything, you know, with people, with animals, with whatever it is, there's always two sides to a story. And when we're in the tourism industry, so this is where I wear 2 hats, for example, is where I'm involved with a tour operating and travel company as a partner, but I'm also a professional guide and a naturalist for almost 25 years. You'll sit and watch The Lion King and you'll be like, oh my, what are they saying? What are they doing? This is wrong, whatever it is. But then, you know, in the 2-dimensional aspect of it, but then as a South African and as an African ambassador and a person who is involved with travel, the amount of people that a movie like that has brought to our continent, and you know, the staff at the lodges, the kind of conservation that the money goes into gives these animals a home, it's just unbelievable. And like, I can go into certain documentaries as well, which is the same thing, because I've either hosted them or watched them. Like I say, don't watch a wildlife documentation with a naturalist or a guide, because the leopard will walk from the den site and the narrator will say the mother's leaving the den and the 2 cubs behind to go hunting, and it flips into a scene and it's walking through a brachystegia woodland, and you're like, no ways, there's no brachystegia woodlands in the area that they filmed it. We'll spoil it for everyone, so don't watch any wildlife movies with a naturalist. However, they have their place. So I kind of close one eye to whether things are incorrect, like hyenas are evil.
Yeah.
And I've got my time when people are out in the field to fix the small little details, but the amount of people that it's opened their eyes and their hearts to Africa, whether it be a movie, a documentary, or something, is priceless for us, you know. So yeah, I'm grateful for them more than anything else, and they've really revolutionized our industry and the exposure to the international market, to wildlife, and that desire to learn and see and come. So little mistakes aside, I don't mind. They must just keep on going so that we can keep on looking after and loving people when they're here.
You know, you talk about don't watch a wildlife documentary with a naturalist or a field guide for that matter. And I'm sure that people come and they say, oh, we've seen Nat Geo Wild and there were kills every 5 minutes. So we want to see kills. And I don't know how many you've seen, but in all my years in the bush, start to finish, I think I've seen 3 kills. That's all. And they think because, and I'm going to quote Derek and Beverly Joubert, because they've spent their lives in the bush, and those documentaries take 5 to 8 years to shoot before editing. And now people are seeing 5-6 kills in a 48-minute documentary, and they figure that happens on a daily basis in Africa, and they're going to be party to at least 3 of those in 4 days.
Yeah. It used to be a really, really big pain in our backside as a naturalist or a field guide when you were taking people out, and whether it be movies, wildlife documentaries, or whatever it is. They had arrived, thanks to the documentary, with a preconceived idea that they can see a kill if they want to, or that animals do A, B, and C because they've seen it. But I think in today's time, from 2017, maybe 2016 onwards, all the way to today, I'm generally finding that it's getting a lot better, where the wildlife documentaries or whatever it is are putting a lot of effort into making the reality of it more aware to the public. Like, for example, you'll start seeing sections at the end of the documentary that are specifically targeted towards the efforts made in the program. Actually, there's a half an hour segment on putting the record straight, basically, is saying, look what these guys have had to do, how long they've had to wait, what hole they had to hide in the rain, and the people and the effort, and the 3-4 years, so that anybody who has sort of their mind started running away with them, that segment at the end has kind of reeled them back into say, oh, okay, it's possible, but I'm going to have to be seriously lucky if I'm going to get to see the same thing as I saw. So yes, in the past, that's just to grab the audience, however they did, whether it's chopping and changing facts or footage to get the audience. But I think people are a lot more wiser now. In terms of questioning, being knowledgeable. The world is, because of the internet and the interest, they're a lot more educated. So you can't kind of get things by people as easy as you used to. Plus, there's segments that they're putting in to say, listen, it's not as easy as it looks.
Those behind the scenes become as important as the documentary, because bless David Attenborough, and I do like his documentaries because the technology that he's using is spectacular. But what grates me is every time he creeps into a cave or somewhere and he goes, I am the first human into this. And you go, no, your cameraman has been sitting there for the last 4 hours waiting for you to arrive in a guano-filled cave with bats screaming around him. And now you come and take credit for being first in the cave. No, you're not.
No, they're amazing. The guys that, like you say, the guys that wait, the guys that climb, that crawl, that just sit in the rain, they're amazing, and they don't get the credit they deserve. So I do see what you're saying, but it's a whole different story, but it's getting better.
I'm so
much
glad.
More well-better.
Mike, is there, after all these years that you've been involved in wildlife, is there still an animal that is top of your list that you either haven't seen or have seen so few of that every time the word, whatever it is, the animal is mentioned, you go into a cold sweat and can't wait to see if you can add it to your list again?
Yeah, definitely. I've had a couple of attempts. It's a melanistic leopard, or a black leopard.
Okay.
That's
so pushing the boat out.
Well, I mean, they are around, and they are seen, and I've had a couple of guests who have been to Africa over the last 20 years, maybe 15 times, and I've looked after them each time. And you can be sitting around the bar having a few drinks after 10 days of their 15th safari, and it's been a successful day, and we've had a glass. They'll actually literally say, what's next? Like, what is the biggest challenge that you could throw at us for us to go look for next time? And black leopard's definitely a big one, and I've been on several trips to look for them and haven't been successful. Some people have, and I also want to throw my laptop or my phone into the pool out of envy. And but yeah, that would, I would say, be number one on the list, because it's also one of the things, like when you're talking about movies that create misperceptions or misnomers, is like in the Jungle Book, the panther.
The panther.
It's a melanistic leopard, and so yeah, they're in India, they're in sort of northern Kenya, and I've been a couple of times, unsuccessful, track them on foot, vehicle, long nights, long days. Yeah, that's still it's my number one target. It's very outdoor, but I'd rather just to take you to beautiful places rather than and unusual places to see. That if you do see it, it's a bonus.
Yeah. No, because I waited 53 years for mine. Not a melanistic leopard. Don't get. But mine was pangolin, and every time I went into a reserve, and the field guides always get on the vehicle and they go, "What would you like to see?" And my stock answer used to be something dying in front of my lens, or a pangolin, and they'd invariably go, "It's easier to find something to die." And then on one of the last trips that I did before lockdown, when the ranger said, "What would you like to see?" I thought, let me not tweak the pangolin god here. And I went, hyena. And they said, "Fine, we've got a clan. I'm sure we can find them." And lo and behold, Mike, we found pangolin. We didn't find a hyena, but we found pangolin. And what the ranger was very kind. They had American guests on the vehicle who weren't really as interested in the pangolin as I was. Buffalo was called in, and the guide said to me, "Listen, I'll leave you with a tracker. You can stay with the pangolin. I'm going to take the Americans to the buffalo." Yeah. And I spent 90 minutes with it. So my first pangolin took me 53 years to find. 2 nights later, my wife goes out on a drive. I had to work, so I stayed behind. They come back, and I pretend to be host, and I've got the alcohol and all of that for them as they get off. And I go, "See anything interesting?" My wife says, "You're not going to believe us." I said, "What?" "They found pangolin." I said, "No, it wasn't a great sighting, but it was a sighting nevertheless." So if I'd gone with them, my first pangolin would have taken me 53 years. My second one would have taken me 48 hours. It's just not fair.
Yep. It's unbelievable how it works. But if I could give you an internet high five to congratulate you on your pangolin, I would, because it's a real toughie. But yeah, so that was it is a very special animal and when you were mentioning earlier on about what guests want to see and what guides want to see,
right?
I would probably say it is the most difficult thing to choose, is when you hear over the radio that there's lions pulling down a buffalo on one section and guys sitting with a pangolin in the other. You try sell that one.
Well, I thought when they called it in, the voice was very garbled, and both the ranger and I thought he'd said penguin, which I thought was even more spectacular, because if I could find a penguin in the Lowveld, my goodness me.
Yeah, I'd go for the penguin.
Yeah, but then there's always, are we going to make it there? Because invariably they say it's very far, and I do understand, because often they don't want to build your expectations up, and you've got to drive for an hour and a half to find an animal that's mobile. You can't chain it to a tree or something like that.
Yeah.
But at least he stayed where he was, and he was receptive to us being there, which was really, really nice.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's always worth a trip if you can make it.
Yeah. Now, so what's next for you, Mike? I know you talked about people postponing, and I'm glad to hear that you say they're postponing for the same dates next year, because otherwise I had visions of people going, "All right, we can't come now, so we want to come in January." And then all your guests want to come in January, and then everything is full and you've got no room.
It has been a little bit of a juggle with that potential problem coming up, where we've struggled to find space for the alternative moved forward date, but we've been really lucky so far. And we also are starting to see little rays of sunshine here and there when we'll have a pop-up article about international flights starting to happen in July or maybe August. So yeah, we sit very patiently every day, waiting for any sort of change or good news or having international pressure coming to influence anything. So you kind of hope for the best, but expect the worst at the moment, so that you're never really disappointed. But I'm positive to think and to believe that things will start going back to normal earlier than anticipated, so that not everybody's had to postpone, and people who have now been told get ready to can the whole thing might actually be brought back into it, might still happen. So we're sitting there at the moment. Everything's set in place for next year in case of the worst, but in case of the best, we're still ready to rock and roll, which I'm hoping for, because I desperately miss being out in the field. And I actually really, really miss being with guests as well.
I hear and I empathize. I was about to say, I'm not going to see you with your family in tow, all in bush kit, walking down the high street of your town, pointing out things just to keep your eye in.
No.
Mike,
they would probably refuse to do that with me anyway, so might as well not try.
If people want to get hold of you, if they are looking to, after having watched this video, and they are keen to do a trip with you, how do they go about that?
Our website is www.africadirect.co.za. And yeah, there's the contact details on there. They can search us. We've got any platform, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or just on the web, Africa Direct in South Africa, with Tanya Kotze and Mark Lindsay Ray and myself, Mark Karantonis. They can research any of the above names and we'll come up. So yeah, we're ready to. It's our passion. It's what makes us happy. To planning trips for us is a vicarious way of living an experience in the bush through others. We put together what we know would make them happy, and through all of the experience, and we wouldn't send anybody anywhere we wouldn't take our own families to. So it's a seriously enjoyable and passionate work for us, because we enjoy doing it and we know what's going to happen. So it's a great journey from start to finish, from where you start the first word in the email to getting on the plane on your way home. It's all just great for us. Never mind.
I want to be back. I want to be back in the bush. You can also find Mike's details on my blog, which is www.travelandthings.co.za. My guest today on In Conversation With has been Mike Karantonis of Africa Direct. Mike, thank you so much for joining me, and I do hope that we bump into each other in the bush sooner than later.
No, thanks for having me, Dave. It's good to see you again and spend some time with you. The company is great, and talking about the bush is bringing it a little bit closer, but we'll see you soon.